Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 2nd and tonight's movie is The Blackcoat's Daughter. This is one of those movies where the trailer really doesn't tell you all that much about what's going to happen in the movie. From what I can tell, it's just a couple, I think it's supposed to be like high school girls. They are stuck at a school for winter break. Their parents aren't coming or something, and looks like there's murders and Satanism and past trauma. It was a very vague trailer, and I'm starting to panic a little bit because last year for the second day of Horror Nights, I also watched a art house horror movie from A24 that had a couple big names in the cast, and look how well that turned out. I doubt this movie could possibly be as bad as The Killing of a Sacred Deer, but I've been surprised before. One of the leads in this movie is Emma Roberts, who I like, but I've only ever seen her in stuff with like a comedic slant to it, so this looks like it's going to be the first like truly dramatic performance I've seen from her. I'm going to go check it out. This was a weird movie. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. There were a few good things in it, but ultimately I don't really think it worked. This is one of those movies where there's no, like, space where they, like, establish the characters or the setting or anything, really. They just drop you right into it, knowing absolutely nothing about anything, and you just sort of pick things up as you go along. Now, ideally, for a movie like this, it's like, as long as you're paying attention, there's going to be a moment towards the end where everything snaps into focus, and that did not quite happen with The Blackcoat's Daughter. There were a few moments where I was like, oh, okay, that's what that is. That's what that means. But it didn't click fully, especially at the very end. There are basically two plot lines going on at the same time. The first one involves these two students at this all-girls Catholic school that's like a boarding school, and they are staying a couple days because their parents couldn't pick them up right away for winter break. And another one about this young woman who, you can tell from the beginning, she escaped from somewhere. This is Emma Roberts' character, and she's trying to get somewhere, and she comes across this couple, and they help her out. And that makes talking about this movie without spoilers really hard, because it wasn't until maybe 40% through the movie where you start even getting a good, solid idea as to what's going on. I'd say the acting overall in this movie is pretty good. Emma Roberts does well. The guy from the couple that helps her out, his name is Bill. He does pretty good. And the two girls that are at the school, Kat and Rose, they are both acted well. Kat's character was kind of annoying, but she was written to be that way. I kind of came up with the term ominese from this movie with her character specifically, because there was this one scene where every time she was asked a question, she would just say something really vague and spooky, and the other character was kind of getting annoyed because clearly the conversation was going nowhere. This is one of the movies where the plot is trying to figure out what the plot is. But I don't really think that what we ended up getting was really worth all the time and energy it took to get there. I'm running around in circles trying to talk about this movie without spoilers. If you want to see it, see it. If you don't. Let's go into spoilers so I can actually tell you what happened in this movie. One thing I noticed at the beginning was that there was no even attempt to try to tell you what time period this is taking place in. And that was actually kind of a clever move, because later on you figure out that the two storylines are not happening at the same time. They're happening 9 years apart from each other. I believe it was just the two girls at the school and two, I think, nuns or nurses or whoever they were, them at the school, and all but one of them were murdered by Kat. That much becomes obvious pretty quickly. And the other half of the movie, the one with Emma Roberts, that's Kat all grown up, and they start out calling her Joan because you don't know anything, but it's revealed that that's a fake name. She got it from a random person's ID. She probably killed that person for that ID. And Bill, and I think the wife's name was Linda, they are the parents of Rose, the girl that died in the other storyline 9 years prior. And you know what? That's all well and good. That's all executed fine. The biggest problem in this movie is Kat's motivation for committing a triple homicide and, sacrificing them for a demon. Back at the school, it's pretty much implied that she was possessed because there was a scene of her, in bed and she, twists herself into a pretzel. But when she inevitably gets caught, the priest, who's like the headmaster of the school, like goes to her. She's like strapped down to a bed. This is like, I think, a mental institution. He performs an exorcism. And when the demon leaves, she's like, no, wait, come back. Her parents died in the car crash on the way to the school. That's why they didn't come to pick her up. And apparently she's like lonely. And then when she escapes from the asylum 9 years later, she kills Bill and Linda, does the same thing, kills them, cuts off their head, and then goes back to the school, down to the same burner in the basement, and tries to summon the demon again. And what happens after that is, I thought, was very poorly executed when trying to like convey what they were trying to do. She goes down to the basement. She like touches the boiler a few times. The school's been abandoned. It's empty and there's nobody there. And then you see her walk into the middle of the road and then start crying. And then the movie just ends. I had to look at the Wikipedia article to figure out what they were even trying to go for there. And apparently she wanted to summon the demon again because she was lonely, and seeing the building abandoned meant that she couldn't summon the demon again? It's so poorly explained, and even if they explained it well, like, really? That's it? If it was like, for most of the movie, you thought that this girl was just crazy and killing people for no reason, and then at the end, you figure out that this was all for like a demonic ritual, and she was like possessed after the first murder, and then she was like got more power from the second murder, that might have been something, but instead it just ends. There's not even really any resolution to anything. It's not like I'm asking for a happily ever after. I'm just asking for like a solid wrap up, something that leaves the audience satisfied. And if I'm the audience we're speaking of, that didn't happen. I hate to say this because I know it is absolutely positively not the case, but it comes off like they had a good idea for the way to set up this story, but by the time that they actually had to write the ending, they were just sort of out of ideas and just sort of did whatever. And again, I know that's not the case. I know how hard it is to make a movie. I know how hard everybody in this process worked for it. And I'm not mad at this movie at all. Like, I made the comparison to The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Like, that movie made me mad. I'm mad at everybody who took part in making that movie. But this one just sort of left me underwhelmed. It didn't feel like I was getting immersed in a story and like relating to the characters. It felt like I was just watching a scene and then watching another scene and then watching another scene, and that just kept going until the movie ended. There wasn't a lot to really connect me to the movie or to connect the different parts of the movie together with each other. I was just watching things happen. If I had to sum up this movie in one word, it would just be confusing, really. And that's kind of the long and short of it all. I'll see you guys tomorrow.